At this time, we'll call to order the regular meeting of Common Council. This is October 15th, 2024. Carrie, roll, please.
Alderperson Carpenter.
Here.
Estercon.
Here.
Gantz.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Kuniger. Ledvina.
Here.
P-Rock.
Here.
Quigley.
Here.
Mayor Boyd.
I'm here, thank you. Item 2, Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3, approval of the minutes of the October 1st, 2024 Common Council meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Carpenter, seconded by Alderperson Ledvina. Any discussion or comments? Seeing there are none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4, public hearing to act on a request for zoning amendment from BP1 Business Park District, BP2 Business Park 2 District, and CON Conservancy District for BP2 Business Park 2 District, 2000 Commerce Drive. Can the clerk please read the notice of the public hearing?
The public hearing notice was published in the Press Times on September 27th and October 4th, 2024.
Thank you. Recommendation from Plan Commission, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. At the Plan Commission meeting in which this item was discussed, staff informed the Plan Commission of the intent behind the request. Several months ago, you saw a development agreement that came through for Marilux, and as part of that process, the site plan process, there's an alley vacation, street vacation.
Dan, excuse me 1 second. If someone out there virtually is not muted, could you mute at this time, please? So caller 1, need you to mute your mic, please. We should be good now. Sorry, Dan.
All right. You saw, as part of that development agreement, and now most recently with some site plan, there is also some additional action items coming forth with it, which is a street vacation and easement discontinuances that you have been seeing over the past few months. But the item in front of you tonight is a cleanup action for a rezoning. So if you see on the map in your packet, and I will put it on the screen, you'll notice that there's a couple areas that are of different colors from the main larger gray color for the site in question on Commerce Drive. There's a lighter gray in a corner and then some Conservancy areas here. When Commerce Drive was platted or constructed and the area was platted, staff roughly created a boundary that was set forth for that stormwater pond with access control points. Since the negotiations with the development agreement, the parcel boundaries expanded and reconfigured and actually combined some parcels. Our goal in the city is to maintain one zoning district per parcel for clarity purposes, and we went through and cleaned up a lot of that during the rezoning or the zoning code update back in 2023. So as a result, once those parcel lines shifted, there were some zoning cleanup actions. The overall building site itself is all self-contained in the Business Park 2 zoning district, but the goal of the parking lot and access points is to get that into a zoning district category and out of the Conservancy district. Prior to 2023, we did not have a Conservancy zoning district. We placed stormwater ponds on plats in what were called conservancies. That probably wasn't the methodology we should have done back in the 80s and 90s. But in today's terminology, conservancy districts are meant for trails and stormwater ponds and alike. Now that parcel line is shifted, the recommendation was to clean up the zoning action, bring it all into one parcel so we don't have that confusion. So the Plan Commission heard from staff. They opened up to public comment, and there were some comments from the neighbors. I think some are here tonight as well. The neighbors to the north that you see, the small strip of gray here. So staff did provide some additional context for some of the questions that they that they had, and it related to primarily around buffers. Now tonight is strictly about zoning discussion, which is not site plan discussion. That's not something up for discussion here tonight. So as a result of that, when we did provide context though, and back in the 90s, the city did provide the property owner, the sole property owner at that time was one sole property owner, granted them about 3 acres of land for $1, so that they could have then a buffer between the residential parcels to the north and the industrial properties to the south. The purpose behind that buffer was so that that would be the buffer. The residents privately controlled the buffer, and then the municipality no longer had to provide that additional buffer inside that zoning code. And so that's the history behind it. Since that time, the applicant has also been meeting with the neighbors to create a plan for how to better buffer them or help them buffer as a means to sort of kind of be neighbors to everybody, nice neighbors to everybody. So as a result, that's a separate private matter that they are working on their own. But tonight is the zoning cleanup action that the Plan Commission unanimously recommended approval on in last month.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll declare the public hearing open for this item on the agenda, item 4. So if anyone wants to speak either in person or virtually, you can raise your hand. We'll have you come up to the table and then you can speak. So for the first time, does anyone want to speak on this item on the agenda regarding the zoning map amendment? All right, you can come up to the table. And what we'll need from you then is your name and your address. And then for public hearing, there's a 5-minute limit for speaking then, just so you know. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Griffin. I'm a resident of 504 Ravine Road, so one of the small lots in the gray area buffer zone. I was just wondering, and a little bit confused about the buffer zone that's established. If the area is converted to BP2, does it still meet the zoning requirements being so close to a residential area?
Dan, you can answer that.
Yep. So the buffer requirements are about the transition yard of a buffer would be for properties that touch the residential component. And now in this case, there is a pond adjacent to it and a residential or an industrial zoned property. The reason why that industrial zoning is maintained, and it actually has to be maintained because of the tax increment district, why that's there, is so that there isn't a double buffer component to that one. So in this case, unless those strips were actually zoned residential and that stormwater pond was also zoned residential, the buffer requirements wouldn't come in play here. So at this point, the buffer requirements are a 50-foot transition yard buffer between a residentially zoned property and an industrial zoned property inside of the city. So that's the kind of the components of that one. And one last little point of clarification, there was a request or a question if these properties could be zoned residential as part of this rezoning. Tax increment district number 10 is zoned industrial, right, or is classified as industrial, and a requirement of that industrial classification is it must maintain that industrial status until such time as the TID closes. We overlaid TID 10 with TID 17, and that overlay boundary does not include those parcels to the north. It actually follows this parcel line. We kept it out of the overlay of TID 17. That's why that can be Conservancy, and discussions with the DOR that doesn't violate any requirements to keep it industrial because it does serve the industrial properties.
Thank you.
One other point I see for transitional yard areas that not only is there required that 50-foot wide area, but also a minimum 6-foot tall berm. This is in addition to the 50 feet wide area. 6-foot tall berm that is parallel to the residential district, and then trees planted every 35 feet, full length of the landscaped area on top of the berm. Stormwater features may be placed within transitional yard area.
Mm-hmm. That's for if it would be zoned, if the neighboring property is zoned residential, and at this point it's not. And that was the intention why it's not, is because then that would have required, I guess you'd say, a double buffer, because the residents would then have a buffer, and then you'd have a buffer on the private side as well. So that's the reason why that was maintained.
I guess the main point is to be a good neighbor. We expected that there would be development back there, but we expected smaller commercial buildings like the ones that were existing even before the Bellmark building went in. And with a 500,000 square foot building there, it seems like you need to take care of the residential people that were there long before that. And that's all I really need to say about that. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
While the public hearing's open, if anyone else wants to speak, now is your time on this item on the agenda. I'm going to really quick, anyone virtual want to speak on this item? If so, just state your name. Okay. Anyone else in person would like to speak on this item on the agenda while the public hearing's open during this process? For the second time? For the third and final time, while the public hearing's open, you can speak on this item. I declare the public hearing closed. Would I entertain a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Actually, I declared the public hearing closed. We have to, well, I can just do that itself. So we have a motion.
Yeah, you can.
We have a motion to approve by Alderperson Carpenter, seconded by Alderperson Gantz. Discussion or comments on this item on the agenda? Alderperson Quigley.
Yeah, Dan, if I got this right, you talked about the difference between TID 10 and 17 and that gray strip. When does each of those increment districts end?
I believe TID 10 is going to be into the 2030s, 2033, I believe, off the top of my head. And TID 17 was created in 2021 after April 5th, or before April 15th, so I believe that one's going to be 2042.
Okay.
So in this case, the properties would be eligible to be rezoned after TID 10 closes in 2033, I believe.
Okay.
All good?
Yeah, I have a second question.
Go ahead.
If you could just circle back, I think you mentioned there were 3 acres that were sold for $1 an acre. Is that on this map? Can you kind of point out where that would be?
That's all the green parcels, or sorry, the gray parcels up here. All of that was sold to the single landowner in 1990 for the sole purpose of creating a buffer between, it's written right in the deed, the 1990 deed, that says it for the sole purpose of creating a buffer between the residential properties and the industrial properties. So 34 years of potential to, for screening and purposes else like that. Otherwise, the sole purpose of the buffering would have been on the municipality or on the developer at that point. So, and there's a couple of spots in the city, I believe, where that's happened back in the 90s.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Alderperson Hanson.
Can you just comment, Dan, briefly on the site plan process?
Yeah, so the site plan process is underway right now. They did receive early start from the state. So what that means, the state only reviews the building itself. So the state doesn't review the site plan. They don't review some of those components. They review the building. So they have received early start from that. But right now, if you're on our city webpage, you can track the site plan process, and it's going through multiple revisions at this point with the architect and engineer for clarification items, more or less technical cleanup actions like we typically see with site plans, unless there's some glaring errors. At this point, staff has been in communications with their consultants to correct those, I guess you say, more technical natures of errors. But what won't be included on that site plan are any of the plantings that they are proposing to do, that the requester is proposing to do on private property, on the neighboring properties, because that's not part of their site plan. So what it hasn't been discussed yet tonight is the petitioner is proposing and has met with the neighbors and is trying to find a solution to plant adjacent on their adjacent parcels additional trees and plantings that would then be their responsibility as was suggested in the deed.
Is that all good?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know if you had another question there on top of the question. Any other questions we have on this item on the agenda? All right, seeing there are none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Item 5, public hearing to act on a request for a zoning map amendment from BP1 Business Park 1 District to C Commercial District, 1302 South Broadway, 1314 South Broadway, and 860 O'Keefe Road. Would the clerk please read the notice of the public hearing?
The notice for this public hearing item was published in the Press Times on September 27th and October 4th, 2024.
Thank you. Recommendation from the Plan Commission, Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. The item in front of you tonight is I'm going to pull it up on the screen here while we're talking. A zoning map amendment request to transition, I guess you say, existing properties that are acting as in a commercial nature out of the industrial category and move them into a commercial classification. And the reason for that is a proposed use that is happening on the corner. Once the notification went out, the neighboring two property owners have requested to also be included in this. And so several months ago, you saw a comprehensive plan amendment for that specific area to transition from the industrial to the commercial, as that's just the nature of how those parcels have existed over time. Especially as you take a look at some of these are more of the, again, less in the manufacturing and more of the commercial categories. And so as a result, Plan Commission heard from staff, heard from the applicant, and unanimously recommended approval of the commercial rezoning.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll declare the public hearing open for this item on the agenda for the public hearing purposes. If anyone wants to speak in person, now is your time on this item on the agenda. Anyone in person want to speak on this item on the agenda? If so, just raise your hand. Virtually, anyone want to speak on this item on the agenda? Just state your name. For the second time, the public hearing is now open for item 5 on the agenda. If you want to speak on this item, just state your name and raise your hand. For the third and final time, public hearings open on item 5 regarding the zoning map amendment. Now is your time to speak. Just state your name. Seeing there is no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed and will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Hanson, seconded by Alderperson Ledmana. Discussion or comments? It appears there is no discussion or comments. That said, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moves us to, I believe, item 6, correct? Item 6, another public hearing. Public hearing to act on a request for a zoning map amendment from MX1 Downtown Mixed Use District to PI2 Campus Public and Institutional District, 221 South Broadway Street. Can the clerk please read the notice of the public hearing?
The public hearing notice was published in the Press Times on September 27th and October 4th, 2024.
Thank you. Recommendation from the Plan Commission. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. The item in front of you tonight is a transition request from what would typically be considered the business or MX1 mixed use classification to the PI2 district. Back when the new zoning code was adopted, we attempted to place as many of the land uses in their permitted categories as possible. And as such, the Mulva Cultural Center was in the downtown, I guess you'd say, commercial zoning district, as it met the definition of a cultural center. At that time, that came with several standards and went through the site plan process back in 2020. Throughout that process, we have, throughout that time, we found that such a large and unique use is sort of being shoehorned in zoning classifications that may not fit them. And so one of the tools that we have afforded to us in our new zoning code is what is known as the PI2 zoning district. You most recently saw this with the MSC, as well as St. Norbert College that did their master plan. It offers the opportunity to place public and quasi-public institutional uses in their own zoning district, in which they are then crafted the standards that we agree to, so that they can be that unique use inside of whatever location that they are. So as a result, one of the things that came up was signage in this area. Again, such a large, unique use, and our smaller are meant to be our downtown zoning district has quite a different standards when you look at smaller buildings compared to such a large building. But staff also took the opportunity to say, if we're going to place it into a PI2 zoning district with a master plan, let's work with the Mulva Cultural Center and identify all the items of their site plan that should be included, and any other potential tweaks and changes that they've identified over the past few years that should also be identified. So as a result, the Mulva Cultural Center team worked with staff to prepare a master plan for that site that incorporated the overall context of what you've seen in your packet here tonight. So staff heard from, or the Plan Commission heard from staff and heard from the applicant to talk about some of the changes with signage, and then unanimously recommended approval subject to some conditions that were included in your packet.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll declare the public hearing open on this item on the agenda. So if anyone wants to speak in person or virtually on item 6, now is your time. And we have one. Very good. Come on up. We'll just need your name and then your address.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Chet Lamers. I'm the Executive Director of Operations at Melville Cultural Center. I'm really just here to answer any questions that might come up. I can give you my address, or you can use the Melville Cultural Center. What would you prefer?
Can they ask questions to him while we're in the public hearing, if any of the elders have anything? If any of the elders have anything while we're in the public hearing and he's here, you may ask at this time. Anyone have a question regarding this zone change? Everyone good? Sorry, Chad.
No, that's fine.
That's actually a good thing.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. For the second time, anyone else like to speak on this item on the agenda? Again, we're on item 6, either in person or virtually. Just state your name. For the third and final time, public hearing is open for the public hearing for item 6. Just state your name. At this time, I'll declare the public hearing closed and would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Levina, seconded by Alderperson Quigley. Questions, comments anyone has? Alderperson Hanson.
Yes, we had a lot of discussion at Plan Commission about the sign. One of the things that was kind of news to us, Mr. Wall, who was there at the time, said that the entire sign is not going to be digital, only a third of the sign, the two ends of the sign. So like the
If you couldn't ask him.
far left side of the sign, which is 1/6 of the sign, the far right side of the sign, which is another 1/6 of the sign. So we had concerns about how quickly the messages would change, and the police department was recommending a minute in between messages. The staff said that our general guidelines are usually, I think, 8 seconds, Dan?
Our standard.
So the Plan Commission compromise was 15 seconds, which Mr. Wall was okay with at the time. To be honest, I was kind of on the fence. I thought about maybe 30 seconds. I know the police department had concerns about distracting drivers there. I was only okay with 15 seconds because it's only a third of the sign. Again, the two ends of the sign. If it had been the full sign, I probably would have wanted 30 seconds. But I just wanted to bring that up to the council that was something that we, really considered carefully at the Plan Commission. And if anyone wants to give their feedback on that, now would be the time.
And I will provide one more piece of context to that. When we had a conversation with the police chief, the 1 minute did come up specifically when the police chief wasn't aware that we did have an 8-second minimum threshold in our standard ordinance, and he put that out there. So the police chief has been more comforted, I guess you would say, with the proposed change than he previously was before he knew about the 8 seconds. But yes, there were still some other changes that we typically don't see, which is a location of a sign is typically perpendicular to a roadway, where this one is parallel. So therefore, keeping it longer is probably better in that case.
Questions or comments? And I don't know if Alderperson Gantz?
I just wanted to tell Jonathan, thank you for bringing that up, because that was a concern at the meeting. And I did agree with Jonathan about the 30 seconds, because that intersection is already, kind of crazy over there. So people don't always pay attention, and if they're looking at a sign, it's distracting. But anyway, that's my thought.
All right, thank you. Other questions, comments? Dan?
I did want to provide one additional clarification. In the packet that you do see there, this is where the electronic message center is included. We've put it at 33% of the sign is included. We've sort of given them the flexibility to place it maybe one sign on one end, or one sign in the middle, or the two signs. So that way, the two signs is almost like the worst case scenario from a visibility standpoint, as they could be changing. If they pick one sign, that's almost better. But we've put it at 33% as the maximum, so that they have the flexibility to move that sign if they so choose.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I remember that was a requirement we added in that plan. So.
Yep. And then we did receive one call on this one as staff. We received a call from the owner of the Lee building requesting just information on it, no concerns, but I just want to make that we did receive one call.
Thank you for that. Alderperson Hanson, were you finished?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Other questions or comments on this zoning change, zoning map amendment? And we have a motion in a second, correct?
We do.
All right. That said, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for coming in, Chet. Item 7, public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Common Council. Anyone in person or virtually have any public comment upon matters not on the agenda, now is your time to speak. For the second time, any public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Third and final time, any public comment upon matters not on the agenda. All right, let's move on to item 8. Recommendation from Finance Personnel Committee to approve 2025 benefit renewal and plan design changes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson P. seconded by Alderperson Carpenter. Discussion or comments? Alderperson Hanson.
Yeah, Shannon, I'm wondering if you can explain a little more the change to the emergency room benefit. So it sounds like right now they just pay $200 copayment, but with this change, they would still pay the $200 copayment, and then they won't get any coinsurance coverage until after their deductible is met. Is that correct?
That is correct. That was the intention of how we set it up. We have a copay structure for the last, 3-4 years. The way that the hospitals, according to our insurance broker, the way that the hospitals have changed their billing structure, as we became aware, is that employees, we did have one particular situation where a member went in and all they were charged was a $200 copay for that, not only just that appointment, but in addition to that, if they had any additional type of testing, CAT scan, whatever, they were not charged their deductible or coinsurance, which obviously that would be concerning because if you would just go in for a regular appointment, aside from the emergency room, you should be charged your deductible as well as coinsurance should apply. So this is just getting our plan back in line with how it was intended to be structured. Now, that being said, if in the event that a member does go in and does have additional testing, they would not be, that $200 would count towards their deductible as well as their coinsurance. So they wouldn't be doubling up in those areas.
So if they just go into the emergency room with no testing or anything else, then it's still just the copay?
Correct.
Okay.
If they do get admitted into the hospital, that copay is waived. And essentially, as you can probably imagine, the intent behind that is to deter people from just running to the emergency room for non-emergency services. We have so many other options to encourage members to go into various places when things are non-emergent. So that's why we have that higher copay in place.
And I know we had large surpluses in past years. Didn't we cut premiums in past years? So.
Absolutely, we did. We had significant cuts over the past several years, and we were, for some years, we were intending or expecting the premium or the reserve balance would continue to go down. It was a good problem we had for several years. So we made some drastic changes the last couple of years. What we're seeing now is we definitely have some members, more than probably we'd like to for a small group, hitting our stop loss. It's kind of shifted our plan. So that being said, we're now at the point where our goal is to have a 6-month reserve balance at about $1.2 million. We're just now under that of about $900 and some $1,000. So we're at the point now we need to start increasing premiums. So although we're increasing, and I want to point out one clarification from finance that I misspoke on something last week. Even with our increase of 10% for 2025, I'd mentioned that our premiums as a whole, I think I said going back 16 years, our premiums as a whole are still going to be less than they were 16 years ago. I need to make a correction on that. It's actually 10 years. So, but that being said, big picture, we're still very pleased with that. If we can even say, 5 years ago, certainly many employers are seeing double-digit increases year after year. So although we have to do a 10% for 2025, just to clarify again, our rates as a whole across the board, not taking in consideration employer premiums versus employee costs, we look at the entire premium, our rates for 2025 are still less than they were 10 years ago.
And then one more question. Is it standard for us not to subsidize the vision plan at all?
It is. We did not ever have vision insurance. We probably implemented that about 8 years ago. That's pretty standard across the board. Certainly some employers supplement it, but we have never done that. It's always been 100% employee paid.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Alderperson Carpenter.
Yes, Shannon, and Wasn't it just a couple years ago, we dropped it from 15% down to 10% as employee paying? Am I correct, or is it more than a couple years as time flies by?
No, you're correct. It's been a couple years. I just want to clarify, we did that for our non-represented employees. Represented employees are still paying the 15%. And we've been in discussions through contract negotiation. That has been item that has been on the table. And, certainly something that we've been talking about, also lowering their premiums down to 10%. We just haven't had a labor contract settled since the time we decreased the premiums for other
But
employees.
my point was getting to be, even though it's increasing now, a few years back, they were paying 15%, and now they're only paying 10%. So it is an increase, but
And I do just want to clarify, hopefully, sorry I wasn't clear. So when we look at not even taking consideration what the employer pays versus the employee, when we look at total premiums, 100% of the premium, our premiums for 2025 will still be less than the entire premium. So, certainly we're still in a good position. Although we don't like to do increases, I think our plan has been running very well the last several years, and, we're pleased with it.
get to the retired world and you'll see increases.
Yeah.
There you go.
Other questions or comments?
Medicare.
All right, seeing there are no more. All those in favor, roll call vote, please. Oh, it says right there, roll call vote. Yeah. got it in there.
Alderperson Carpenter.
Aye.
Essercon.
Aye.
Gantz.
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
Coniger. Ledvina.
Aye.
P-Rock.
Aye.
Quigley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9, recommendation from Finance Personnel Committee to forward to Common Council to approve salaries for mayor and city council for 2026, 2027, 2028, and 2029.
Move to approve.
We need a specific number though, right?
You have no number in here, am
We
I
have no number
correct?
here.
So what do you want to approve to?
So if you,
They're letting you know staff is getting 3% this year? Is there,
so how do we want to do this?
I think 3, wasn't it?
Should we make it well, we need a motion and then we
I'll
can,
make a motion to go 3%.
okay.
Second.
Is the motioner now seconder okay with
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
All right,
Good.
we have a motion by Alderperson Carpenter, second by Alderperson P-Rock, for discussion purposes, obviously, for 3%. Larry?
For all the years.
Just to clarify, is
For all
that per
the
year?
Per year. Once we get it locked in, it's in.
Just wanted to make sure.
Per year, both of you are okay with that? Thank you.
That's okay.
All right, we now have a motion on the floor. Any discussion on this motion regarding the salary increases? Alderperson Hanson.
Yeah, we've done 2% since 2014, and I know that has not kept up with inflation, and who knows what inflation is going to be like here the next 4 years, but I would be more comfortable sticking with the 2% that we've had for the last 10, 11 years.
Very good, thank you. Other questions or comments? And again, as of now, we just have the motion at 3% on the table, right? Correct. So any questions, comments on that?
I'll make a motion to amend it to 2%.
We have a motion to amend right now. We need a second for that, I believe, correct?
What is
The-
the length of time for the 3%? 4 years?
It would be for 4 years, yeah.
Each year for 4 years, I believe is what he's stating.
And would the 3% be the same?
Yes.
3% each year for 4 years, yes. So we still have the motion to amend, and we're waiting for a second. If not, I will let it die. I don't have a motion, so that will then die. So we still have the original motion on the table at 3% each year for 4 years. Any additional discussion on that? All right, seeing there is none, roll call vote, please.
Alderperson Essercon.
Aye.
Gantz.
Aye.
Hanson.
Nay.
Coniger.
Aye.
Ledvina.
Aye.
P-Rock.
Aye.
Quigley.
Aye.
Carpenter.
Aye.
Motion carries with Alderperson Hanson voting no. Let's move next to item 10. Recommendation from Finance Personnel Committee to approve camera corner connecting point quotes for expansion of the city's surveillance camera system.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Carpenter, seconded by Alderperson Quigley. Discussion or comments? Alderperson Hanson.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we can get a little more detailed breakdown of the funding sources, because the memo mentions 125,000 in ARPA funding, but then later on in the request for proposals, it talks about money set aside from IT budget carryover, park department funding. So I'm just wondering if we have this all covered so we don't have to take from unassigned reserves.
The short answer to that question is yes. The three funding sources, it's actually $100,000 in ARPA funding. I did make that correction in the packet. I apologize for that initial error. The $100,000 initially comes from the ARPA funding that was approved last year. $49,000 of that then would also come from the city's IT budget, which was carried over for the parks and for the police department internal cameras. And then there was also an additional $12,000 from the parks department that was set aside for park cameras. So you have the $100,000, the $49,000, and the $12,000 for a grand total of $161,000 of funding that's already approved.
Okay, so we're just under that then.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Alderperson Carpenter.
What is a ready to deploy for camera system? Could you just?
So it's very similar to the camera system that we're proposing on William and Broadway. It's one physical camera, but it actually has lenses that point in 4 different directions. And the idea behind it is instead of encountering a problem and then, okay, we need to put a camera up there, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks later, we get the camera delivered. The idea is to have one basically sitting on the shelf, ready to deploy as soon as we could have a city electrician hook it up to electricity. But it'd basically be a camera that would mount on a pole pretty much anywhere in the city that we would have electricity. The idea being to be very prepared and responsive to wherever a problem might occur.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Alderperson Hanson.
Can you just explain what locations these are going to be installed in?
Yeah, so we actually have 7 different projects. Of the 7, only 5 have definitive pre-planned locations. So the first camera project is the De Pere Police Department internal camera system. That's actually 12 different cameras all inside the secure area of the police department. It includes the common points of ingress and egress. It includes our evidence submittal room. It includes our evidence locker or storage area. Basically, any point that is of a security concern for us. Most of those cameras are actually replacing legacy cameras that have been in place for a number of years that have reached their end of life. The second project is for that traffic intersection that I just mentioned at William and North Broadway. The idea there is it kind of looks at an area where we have a ton of traffic. It's kind of that east downtown traffic corridor. We also have a lot of traffic going down to Front Street, to Voyager Park. It's kind of a very interesting point in that area, and also could then, because it's, again, one of those 4-directional cameras, it could also monitor the new development that's going in where the old Shopko location used to be. The third one is the bridge and Riverwalk cameras that we've been talking about for some time, along the Riverwalk, along the river, and then one of the cameras that actually be mounted up on the bridge, which would be a pan-tilt zoom type camera. So that camera could be used to monitor everything from traffic on the bridge, any kind of concerns we had in the roundabout, to things down on the dam and the Riverwalk. It basically could be utilized in a variety of different locations depending on what's going on, including potentially to monitor if we had any major developments going on along Front Street or in that new development area there. The fourth camera location is Optimus Park. Again, it's one of those 4-headed cameras, so it's one physical camera, but able to cover hopefully a pretty good, not quite 360-degree view around the park pavilion, but cover most of the footprint of that park. And then the fifth location is Southwest Park with a very similar 4-headed camera, again, trying to cover most of the area around that park pavilion. The sixth item is called the mobile or portable investigative cameras. That system is designed to be deployed basically out of a Pelican case, a large rolling suitcase with protective foam, I guess, for lack of a better description. But that one would be able to be deployed either in an investigator's vehicle, like a detective van or something like that, or it could also be utilized at a business. So if we had a business that was experiencing a lot of break-ins, a lot of problems, we could actually deploy it in a semi-portable way any place that we had electricity and a place to put the camera, essentially. So that one doesn't have a fixed location because the purpose is to be able to move it to different locations as the need arises. And then that seventh one is that shelf-ready system that would be designed to be mounted in a fixed location, but someplace where we have identified there is a long-term concern, and we want to have that camera to be able to add to our rotation.
Okay. I know we had a lot of vandalism issues at some of those parks, so that's good.
So it's good to have
That in there.
And by the way, Steve Massey's out there as well too. If anyone has questions for Steve, our IT person, so feel free. So between both of these, I think you have pretty good answers. All right, any additional questions or comments? All
I
right.
guess I have one.
Alderperson Conacher.
What does this add to the total fleet? What is the total number?
Well, that's an interesting question because some of the cameras we have already deployed are also the 4-lens cameras. So for the total number of sensors or individual lenses, I guess I would say, that is going to put us right around, including all of the ones in and around City Hall, right around 112 lenses, give or take, depending on, as cameras come online. I also have to remember, though, that we just did add 12 lenses over at the Nelson Pavilion as part of that project. So my count is actually off a little bit because of those cameras. But the important part, I guess, from my perspective is we don't have a lot of cameras on the east side of the city at this point, other than right here at City Hall. And that was one of the goals that was relayed to me is, hey, we want to get some more presence in that east downtown area because we already have a bunch on Main Avenue by the Art Alley, and in those areas, but we really didn't have any presence with them down here.
Good.
112.
Yeah, good question, yeah.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
You are
Any other questions or comments we have?
peeing in the parking lot.
All right, it appears not. That said, roll call vote, please.
Alderperson Gantz,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Conacher, Ledvina,
Aye.
P-Rock,
Aye.
Quigley,
Aye.
Carpenter,
Aye.
Essercon.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. Thank you, Chief. Item 11, recommendation from the Board of Public Works on approval of draft policy for full sanitary lateral replacement program.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Carpenter, seconded by Alderperson Ledmina. Discussion or comments? Excuse me. Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Item 12, recommendation from the Board of Public Works on approval of Civic Group Welcome Plaques Policy.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Carpenter, seconded by Alderperson Gantz. Discussion or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Item 13, recommendation from the Board of Public Works regarding maintenance along County PP.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Hanson, seconded by Alderperson Gantz. Discussion or comments? Alderperson Hanson.
Yeah, I appreciate all Brian's work on this issue. I know this is going to be a little extra work for the city, but I think it's a good solution that the property owners will be happy with. So,
And it should be noted, I think they still have to get signed agreements from the.
Yep, signed agreements.
Just so everyone's aware of that as well, too. Any other questions or comments we have? All right, seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Item 14, consideration and possible action to spend up to $2,000 for city administrator retirement party. That's the way it's phrased.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Carpenter, seconded by Alderperson Conacher. Discussion, comments,
Okay.
just in case Shannon is here and she'll be able to answer anything, because I'm going to defer to her. Anyone have any questions or
I
comments?
made my comment to Larry earlier.
Do you want him just to leave right now? Alderperson Conacher.
No, Larry loves acting like none of this, like no big deal. So the thought process around it, as far as like, is this a precedence, case by case? I know some of it is, but just for the record, for those,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. My view, I mean, we have city policy for a reason to generally provide consistency. To any policy, there's rare exceptions, and I think this would be one of them, given the fact of Larry's significant tenure with the city. In addition to that, his position with the city, not only, some department heads obviously invite, even though they invite the entire city to their party, generally speaking, they know other employees in other departments, but Larry does work with the entire city. In addition to that, his connections with the entire community. I think this is just one of those situations that warrants an exception, so that's why it's being recommended.
So, for example, other individuals that come up for retirement, where we would just case by case it would come up?
Correct. If we would recommend an exception.
Alderperson Ledvin, I think she was up first, and I'll go to Alderperson Carpenter.
Well,
Sorry
then
about that.
just a question, I guess, is maybe it's time to review our policy on expenditures for retirements and resignations. Do you think, is it something that's used?
Absolutely, it's used.
Okay.
You know, certainly, I know we put this policy into place, made it formalized, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, just to provide some sort of consistency. But if the council feels that the funding level is not appropriate or they should be higher, it's something we can put together.
I didn't realize it was introduced that recently.
Yeah, I remember that discussion we had. Are you done?
I don't.
Alderperson Carpenter.
I did a little research before the meeting and got some answers to my questions. So Larry's been here too long, as you all know. 'Cause 22 years ago,
Soft.
when other people left, other administrators, they did have parties and probably went over the $2,000 mark.
Thank you for that.
So that, otherwise I had feelings on this too, and everything. So I did a little research prior to that.
I do make a mean sloppy Joe in the crock pot. Just putting it out there.
I can make
mean,
some great chili too.
Ooh, sounds like a rough next day.
We'll just go to Public Works and we'll eat over at MSC with one of their lunches. Other questions or comments we have? And again, please note, it does state up to $2,000. So we're just in the early stages and we have to kind of move forward on this and we need help with decisions. So this kind of helps guide us and move us forward. Because it should be a big shindig.
Yeah. Who covers it when we go over?
Shannon.
No.
Yeah, the retiree.
Marty.
Is that what it is?
Marty does.
Retiree.
And I do want to point out, our policy would never to approve alcohol. So Larry is aware that if alcohol is provided as part of it, he is on the hook for that. So city would not be
I
paying
know
for
you
alcohol.
all like Schlitz, so you're good. That's what you're gonna get.
oh, Keystone.
Bush Lights. Other questions or comments, and thanks for that clarification, alcohol not included, at least within this amount of money we have. All right. That said, I think the discussion is done, and we do need a roll call vote, please.
Alderperson Hanson,
Aye.
Cuniger. Aye. Ledvina.
I
P-Rock.
Aye.
Quigley.
Aye.
Carpenter.
Aye.
Essercon.
Aye.
Gantz.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 15, Ordinance 2422, amending Chapter 150 of the DPMC Municipal Code regarding traffic regulations, Schedules F and G.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Carpenter, seconded by Alderperson P-Rock. Discussion or comments? Seeing there is none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 16, Resolution 24990, authorizing termination of agreement for contractor services between the City of De Pere and Greener Bay Compost, LLC.
Move to approve.
second.
Motion by Alderperson Quigley, seconded by Alderperson Ledvina. Discussion or comments? Alderperson Hanson.
So I know we're looking at doing a different arrangement, so that's not really part of this, correct?
It is
mean-
in the memo, when we discontinue this contract with Greener Bay Compost, the city is then proposing to run a reimbursement program similar to the sump pump program that's out there. Residents who would use Greener Bay composting services going into 2025 would then be able to submit invoices back to the city for reimbursement of their registration fees, 50% of the registration fees quarterly, and then we would utilize the budget proposed for 2025 to reimburse residents.
Now, what's to stop them, just theoretically throwing this out there, significantly raising the registration fees, and now our 50% reimbursement for each resident is higher than what we would initially think is acceptable?
Nothing. The registration fees are set by Greener Bay Compost based on what we assume is their needs to run their program and make a profit to run it efficiently.
I think Larry wants to make a comment then too. Sorry about that.
No problem.
We did talk internally as one of the options of setting a cap per person or per household that you would reimburse.
Okay.
So that would accomplish what you're looking for, where it doesn't really matter how much they raise it. We're only going to give each household that participates this amount. That'd be I think the intent.
Okay.
Alderperson Ledvina?
I'm not sure if there's other services like this out there, but if there were, would we reimburse for other companies as well? Okay.
We've done research. There are other companies, but they are scattered throughout the state. I think the closest was Stevens Point.
Okay.
So in the area, they are the leader and I think the only option.
Okay,
Is there a
thanks.
termination date in this contract? Is there a termination date in this contract if they approve termination?
The termination can be made by either party, the city or Greener Bay Compost at any time. Greener Bay Compost indicated they would wish to terminate the contract at the end of the year. We are making a motion then to accommodate that request and
Okay,
agree and
very good. Yeah,
mutually terminate it.
Okay, good. I just read the recommendation. I didn't see that in there, so that's good clarification. Other questions or comments that we have? All right, seeing there are no more, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 17, Resolution 2491, authorizing Microsoft 365 Enterprise Agreement and approving renewal quotation.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Levin, second by Alderperson Gantz. Discussion or comments? Anyone have anything? All right. Appears not. That said, roll call vote, please.
Alderperson Conacher?
Aye.
Ledvina?
Aye.
Pirock?
Aye.
Quigley?
Aye.
Carpenter?
Aye.
Estercon?
Aye.
Gantz?
Aye.
Hanson?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 18, Resolution 2492, approving grant agreement modification to Wisconsin Division of Public Health Contract number 621094.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Pirock, second by Alderperson Carpenter. Discussion or comments? All right. Seeing there are none, roll call vote, please.
Alderperson Ledvina?
Aye.
Pirock?
Aye.
Quigley?
Aye.
Carpenter?
Aye.
Estercon?
Aye.
Gantz?
Aye.
Hanson?
Aye.
Conacher?
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 19, appointment to the Historic Preservation Commission by Mayor Boyd.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Hanson, seconded by Alderperson Levina. The person we're looking to approve is Mary Ann Schumerth to Historic Preservation Commission. I talked to her tonight, and I said, "There's no way they're not going to approve you." So
right.
she'd be very disappointed if you disappoint her.
Don't make him a liar.
Question, and we want to thank her for stepping up as well.
Yep.
Questions or comments? Alderperson Hanson.
We're also excited. We're going to be fully staffed on HPC for the first time in a while. So.
Yes, you are. You just jinxed that one, didn't you? Any additional comments?
I tried.
That said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 20, future agenda items. Does anyone have anything? Looks like not. Item 21, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Carpenter, seconded by Alderperson Pirock. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Bye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We're officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody.